Welcome to 33 Founders, a series about founders of the coolest startups. Brought to you by 33 Voices and hosted by Chase Jennings and Jenna Abdu.
My name is Greg Costello. I'm the founder and CEO of Givit. And the problem we're solving is that we think that shooting video is really easy. In fact, devices like glass make it even easier. But we haven't made it any easier to create videos. So what Givit wants to do, what we think we've achieved, is we made it really easy for anyone to create really good videos right off their smartphone.
Excellent. So before we dive too far into Givit, then I want to talk about something that I know you think is pretty important, and that's the name of Givit. So can you tell us a little bit about the value of a company name and why this stood out, and maybe mention some earlier names?
Yeah, we looked through literally hundreds of names. We had a little contest even within the company to name Givit. And a lot of them has the word cam in it, or camera, or shoot, or something like that. And we felt like we looked at the market out there, and everybody was using those. So it was really hard to differentiate. And so we're talking about what is the value of Givit. Ultimately, the value of Givit, if you make a great video, what do you want to do? You want to give it away. And so we thought, let's focus on the value. And the value is sharing. And so we thought Givit was a great name.
Interesting. So in an article, you noted that sometimes the most creative ideas come from the most unlikely sources, which I believe is where your name came from. Aside from the name, though, can you tell us another example of this?
You know, I think one thing is be open. So oftentimes in companies, it's the person who has the biggest salary gets to make decisions, and that's usually, that can oftentimes be the wrong person. And so what I've learned to do in my career is really listen. And I think when we look at this, there's all kinds of examples. Everybody here, no matter what their role is, gets to have an input on the product. And so we spent a lot of time looking at some of the number of features that are out there. And I think a lot of the design came from that. A lot of the input in our look and feel came from people outside of the design space and using the app. And so so I'm trying to think of a very specific example, like the name. I think the design around how we tap and interact with it came from people that weren't designers. The one-tap effect came from a non-designer.
Perfect. So I'm a big basketball star, or used to be a big basketball star, and I'd love to know more about the campaigns you're working on right now.
Yes. So we're working with a very large site called Dailymotion. It has about 120 million monthly uniques, and a company called Ball is Life. And Ball is Life is this basketball brand. Kids love it. It's all focused on around high school basketball. And we went there, and I met, and the CEO is another entrepreneur. He really bootstrapped this company. And I noticed these kids just loved the brand. So we said, what if we combine forces? And we're going to do a campaign where people will showcase their best shots, their best drills, their best skills, all using Givit. And then as a return for that, they'll get to win iPad minis and great Balls Life gear. What we noticed was, and really the focus was on kids. When you're young, you need to show who you are, right? You don't have any name recognition, right? You're not Michael Jordan. You have to go out there and showcase what you do. And we noticed kids were already doing that. So this was a great way for them to showcase what they do, to show off they would do it anyway, to work with these great brands, and to get a reward for that. Who doesn't want an iPad mini or some great basketball gear?
Right.
So what they do is you take your best shot, you record it, you edit it with Givit, and you upload it, and then they just hashtag Givit your best shot, right?
That is correct. Now, of course, also, because the app allows you to add music, we've included a bunch of music in the app. So a lot of hip-hop. It's not elevator music. It's really fun music. And also special effects. And we have a couple of special effects that we use, particularly for sports. One is called Instant Replay. And what that does is it shows you once in regular speed and then again in slow motion. But rather than making that a complex thing, we make it a one-tap effect. And then we have another one in honor of the movie The 300. Did anybody see the movie The 300? In that, it's an effect where basically it starts off regular speed, goes fast, and then slow, and then fast, and then regular speed. So think about that for a dunk, since you love basketball. Don't you want to highlight that dunk and make that dunk slow motion? But as you're running to the basket... Exactly. Awesome. So, and again, you can do this with tools like Final Cut and Premiere. But how many people have the time or effort to do that? Moreover, isn't all that video you shot sitting on your iPhone? So why make you go to another tool, offload it, go through this editing process, and come back? Give people the ability to do this just one-touch effects with video.
I think one of the best things that Givit does for people is oftentimes if I know I have to go home and upload it to my computer and then edit it, I'm not going to share it with any of my friends, so I can just instantly, with a couple of taps, upload it, and then everyone can see, whether it's a campaign or just any video, what I want to share.
That's exactly right. I mean, it really is about being in the moment. And if we get distracted, and we don't get distracted with lots of different things, we all have good intentions, but going and offloading that video is probably not going to happen. So if you can just do it with a few taps and be done and share, by the time, we were doing some campaigns where during every quarter, every break, people were sharing videos. So by the time they actually left the game, they had already uploaded 3 or 4 or even a dozen videos. They get back and then they get all these accolades for all these videos they've uploaded already. So they're getting little pings. Oh, I would love that video. And oftentimes, let's face it, one of the great things about things like Twitter and others is it forces us to think about the important things, right? I can't write an essay in Twitter. I got to get very focused. And so what Givit does is allows you to just focus on the good parts of your video rather than keeping it long and, let's face it, boring.
I want to talk quickly about your other campaign as well that you guys are doing with Paris Hilton. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we connected with Paris. She has a whole line of fashion and clothing out there. And, we do love sports. A lot of the people on Givit are women, young ladies. And so about 50% of our audience. And so besides being interested in sports, they're also interested in fashion. So this was an opportunity for people to go ahead and talk about fashion and design and then upload their videos, and then they could win a whole bunch of Paris swag.
Excellent. I mean, how are you getting big names like this then? Are any of them approaching you? So your product's pretty spectacular.
Thank you. It was really interesting. When we first started off, we couldn't get anybody to return our phone calls, right? But what happened, especially around skateboarding, is that they noticed that these skateboarders would upload these videos and they would get 500, 1,000, 2,000 plays. Well, that doesn't seem like a lot, but when you think how big the community is, and try to get 1,000 plays on YouTube, it's really hard. Why? Because we have this really targeted community. So one of the key skateboarders in the area, Tyler Martin, uploaded some of his videos, and he's sponsored by Sector 9, and they saw all these views. They said, hey, wait, we will return your calls. This is really cool. And you're getting thousands of plays. And so, and it was because we really did target these young communities, and they seem to love the app.
Right, and there seems like there's so much potential with all these campaigns. So I'm curious, how do you plan on integrating these with your business model?
So it's a really good question. Our first focus and foremost is on growth. There's lots of examples out there of people, once they grow big, they can figure out how to monetize. And I think until you have that very giant audience, monetizing prematurely, probably not a good idea, right? In fact, we even look at Instagram today. How many people are on Instagram? What's their business model, right? It's not even clear yet. But Facebook waited a long time before they started really incorporating advertising. And I think their first models actually weren't very good. So it's a trial and error. But you don't want to turn off your audience. So when we think about it, though, you look at Sector 9 and their involvement. It's not an in-your-face advertisement. Instead, it's promotion. It's sort of like this. If you look at a fashion magazine, one doesn't say these fashion ads are obtrusive because they're not, because I'm looking for a fashion, or I like Wired Magazine, and Wired Magazine has a lot of gadgets ads, right? That doesn't bother me. That's exactly what I'm there for. So if Sector 9 is involved, then in our audience is skateboarders, or a lot of them, it's not an advertisement that's obnoxious. It's an advertisement that actually makes sense to them.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing that I want to talk about quickly with advertising. We spoke yesterday to Shane Snow, who's one of the co-founders of Contently, and he shared with us that the best companies advertise by never directly promoting themselves. So what have you learned the past couple of years with Givit about personal branding and getting your name out there?
Yeah, that's a really good point. In fact, if you look at, we do advertising, but the primary thing we focus on is not us, but what you get. And so what we noticed was with skateboarders, they were already creating skateboarding videos. And so when we did advertising, it was all about the skateboarder. It was very quietly about Givit. And it was really also bringing value. What do I want as a skateboarder? I'm already taking video. I just want to make it easier. I don't want to be an editor. I want to be a skateboarder who happens to show off what I do. And so all of our advertising is really focused, again, on what you get and the person and not Givit itself.
So would you say it's safe to say then if you just focus on adding value, then it'll create itself?
I think so, as long as you're communicating your message correctly to the right audience, and that's really important. People ask me why we don't advertise, for example, to soccer moms. And I always answer, because soccer moms are really busy. Okay? They don't have time, right? So it seems like an obvious audience. For us, we focus entirely on the audience we think is important. And that audience is people that are active, that are engaged, that are mobile, and want to share their life. Right. And I think if you do that very targeted messaging and you're correct in your product, then it'll resonate with them. You also need to pay attention to what they value that they don't say. You need to pay attention to design, because young people are very tuned in with design, and they want things to not only feel right but look right and be part of their experience. It can't be obnoxious, but it has to be there for them.
Yep. And now you mentioned Daily Motion. Do you have a partnership with them right now?
We do. In fact, we have a contest going, the Give It Your Best Shot, and we connected with them because they have a lot of people who want to create video, and they're looking for the tools to help them create video. And so we think it's a sort of a perfect partnership.
So,
do you mind if I go? I want to ask really quickly. So we've talked a lot about how users can use Givit and just how I can get on and edit my video and share it with my friends. But how about other startups in the community? How can they use it to work on these campaigns with you guys?
Well, that's a really good thing. I think that when I look at it, I ask a lot of people, do you have a video that talks about your business? And a lot of times they say no. And I say, why not? You're obviously passionate about it. Why aren't you using video? And they're like, well, it's really expensive and I don't know how to do it. And I said, can you just talk? Yeah, but I don't know how to use the editing tools. So we go through that whole process. I say, let me show you Givit. I'll teach you how to use Givit in 1 minute. And I show them how to use it. They're like, I could do that. Exactly. So I think the very base level is you can create videos with Givit. The other part is you can promote yourself on Givit if you match our audience, which is really this young audience who are very interested in connecting that way. So a company, if you're a brand like Sector 9, great. If you're a brand that's selling life insurance, not going to work with us.
And when you go and you form these different partnerships, just as we spoke about, you have with Daily Motion, what's the most important thing you look for in the people that you're working with?
An earnest desire to work together.
I like that.
If you have an unequal relationship, if they're not getting a lot out of that relationship, then they're either going to be disinterested or it's just going to be about money. So
is speed important to you?
Speed is very important. Daily Motion has been one of our best partners. They work with us all the time. I think they're a giant company. They do quite well. And that's my recommendation for all entrepreneurs. Don't work with people who aren't passionate about achieving the same type of goals or an intersecting goal as you. Otherwise, it will either be entirely defocusing for them, or they'll put their hand out and say, I only want to work with you for money. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Right. So, I mean, it seems like you designed your company to open up its own space. I don't really view you as having any competitors, but would you say that you are competing with people like Vimeo or YouTube?
I think you're always competing people for their time. And I don't think it's about Vimeo. It's really about, if I want to be creating video, who am I going to go to? What am I going to use? So one of our competitors might be iMovie. Somebody may say, I need to use iMovie instead of, I can't use Givit because it's too simple. It wouldn't work. And in fact, now people try it out and they go, it is easy. So a lot of it's sort of mindset. Other people say, well, all my friends are on Vine. And I say, great. I said, does your story fit in 6 seconds? They're like, no. Okay, so let's move over here. Or they say, well, I already have a lot of Vine clips, but I really want to tell a story. And I say, have you tried uploading all your Vine clips into Givit and putting them together? And they say, no, but now it's actually a trend on Givit for people to roll them up. So you're right. I think we fit sort of in the middle, right between, we fill that gap between these really micro short videos and these long form, sort of more arduously edited videos. So we're in that sort of sweet spot between the two.
And you were instrumental in the success of companies like mp3.com. You helped sell digital style to Netscape. So I'm just curious, and we're focusing now on your entrepreneurial journey. What's made the most success in your development of these companies, and now your recent success with Givit?
One thing, huh? I think being relatively fearless is important, or not exacerbating the fear that you might have. Like, what's the worst that could happen if something goes wrong? So being realistic. I also think you have to be a little bit crazy as to sort of what happens, right? You have to go, well, what if we did this really insane thing, like tried to completely own the video creation space? That would be sort of an insane thing to do. And when I was at MP3, it was, what if we could completely change the music industry? When I was at Netscape, what if we could redo how people interact on a browser? When I was at Apple, it was, we could completely change and make computing part of somebody's everyday life. Right, so all these things they seem normal today, but they were kind of insane back then. Like, no one will do that. Think about the evolution of where music has gone. Music used to be a place where you go down to a store. I know it's hard to believe. You go down to a store and you buy a shiny disc and you put it into this machine and you have to listen sort of in order. If you're lucky, you could skip to the next one. That was the process. And now it's the world of music. Every single song you could ever imagine is available in your fingertips to play the way you want, and you can socialize around it. That's a whole new way of thinking. So I think as an entrepreneur, the most important thing is don't listen to the crowd. Be fearless. Understand people. Steve Jobs, who was a legend, one of the most important things people don't understand is he just understood what motivated people. So understanding people, and that sounds funny as a technical guy, but understanding how people tick is probably one of the most important things you can do. To look to the future. You can't target what's here today. That's why whatever you do at the moment may seem insane, right? What you're targeting is the future where you're looking to intersect with that. A lot of people will tell you why you can't do something. You need to ignore those things. Right? It's not that they're not partially right, or they could be partially right, but oftentimes their motivation is they like the status quo. They like things the way they are. Most people do. Most people hate change. They'll tell you they like change, but they don't like change. You want to be that person who embraces change, who makes it part of your everyday life.
Perfect. And that's something that I've been really excited to talk to you about. Is one of the things that really differentiates Givit is this private sharing. And
Yes.
I was wondering, when you're going in, today everything is about being social.
Yes.
The second you eat a meal, you take a picture and you put it on Instagram.
Right.
And
Right.
everybody can see it. So I wanted to know, when you first went, you guys had really successful funding
Yes.
in your first run. When you're going to talk to all these investors, how did you approach that with them? Did you think they'd be excited about private sharing, or did you think they'd be weary about it because everything has become so social?
Or did they even reshape how you were pitching it?
I think that's a really good question. What our knowledge came from is we did all the back end for the flip video camera. And what we noticed was that the vast majority of sharing was private. It was to just a few people. And that makes sense. If I'm sharing a part of my life, I may want to be very private, right? If I've got a video of my child who is doing dance, I don't think maybe the rest of the world wants to see that. So I want that option, right? And I think if we look at things like Snapchat, that conversation would have been a lot easier if Snapchat had already been out, right? Because that's all about private. And I think what's happening is, there's an evolution that's happening in society where they're realizing that private is as important as public is. And why should there not be the choice, right? And shouldn't you own that choice? So I think that's an evolution. I think it's a really good movement that's happened in society, that we choose what we want to show.
So what's been the biggest challenge then that you've encountered while developing Givit? And how did you overcome it, most importantly?
I think the biggest challenge is always that you can never go fast enough. You can never go fast enough. And so as fast as we come out with an update about every 3 weeks. It's still never fast enough. And I think I've been doing development for a number of years, and I've seen a lot of different models that have been out there. And the model we use is this sort of controlled chaos. Controlled chaos is a lot like producing a film. You have a director, which is sort of me, but I don't do command and control. I don't dictate what's going to happen. Instead, it's like we get together, we have a general thing, I allow everybody to contribute. We have a lot of conversations, we have a lot of arguments, but ultimately we are focused on creating something great. Everybody's in it together. And it is that controlled chaos that people always ask me, well, what are you going to have? What's going to be there for 3 months from now? And I tell them, at the large, we're going to make it even easier and better to create video. At the small, I can't tell you, because it changes based on what we're seeing in activity and behavior. We listen a lot to what our users are, what they're saying and what they're actually doing. Right? So if I see a lot of videos where people are having to like cut up their Givit video, they'll go out of Givit, they'll put two pieces together. We're like, well, we don't want them to do that. We want to do everything within Givit. What can we add to Givit? It's still easy. That will make it easy for them to create that video. At the same point, allow them to do the fun things they want to do with the video. So that's where our focus is.
So then user feedback is really what dictates how these updates are, and we really admire how clean your app is.
Thank you.
It's not too much less, it's definitely more. So how do you decide then what stays and what goes?
There's a lot of features we'd like to add, but if we can't make it simple, we don't put it in. That's really that. It's
Perfect
really
answer.
That's it.
So what if you're absolutely in love with it though? How do you let go of an idea?
It's painful. I think so a lot of times we end up sleeping on it, and then when we sleep on it, we always come back with the right decision, right? There's a lot of features. I'm really bad. These guys always we have meetings every day for about 15 minutes, and they're always worried when the weekend's over what crazy idea will Greg have come up with now, and so I'll say this is what we're thinking about, and they've got them over the idea that I'm just going to force an idea down them. We're going to deliberate it. We're going to think about it. A lot of times we have to let them go, or we have to put it off for 6 months. If we can't figure out that simple, easy way, we discard it. And again, I laugh because I always say I wish I had some yes men in the company, but I don't. They always feel comfortable telling me they don't like my idea. And conversely, I want to hear all their ideas, because some of the best ideas come from, not from the top down, but from the people that are part of the entire organization. And then the other thing is we have Steve Watanabe, who also listens to what the communication is coming in from all the users. We have a number of different feedback loops for them to do that. We engage them. We have community managers who work with them, and we're always asking people, what would you like? And then the comment threads, because most of these things are public, they're going to tell you, I wish I had this, I wish I had that, I wish I could do this. I'm using this other app. I wish Givit had this feature, right? That will tell us. Now, here's the interesting thing. You don't just jump at everything people say. Why? Because then you'll end up with a really complex tool. If any of you have ever used Photoshop or things like that, it's tons and tons of features. You can do anything with Photoshop. Have you ever tried to sit down and use something like Photoshop?
Been using it for almost my whole life now, it seems like, and I still am learning new things every day. Right,
and you live in it, right? Mm-hmm. The average person, we assume, will not live in Givit. They'll just use it occasionally. Yes, and the thing is, what will also happen, and this is an interesting thing, is the easier your app is to use, the more engrossed people will get in it. Mm-hmm. One of the mistakes we made early on is we only allowed for simple features. Okay, so what happened was they couldn't do certain things they wanted. So we actually added, if you double tap on any segment or scene, it'll open up to this more complex editor. Most people don't see it, but those who have found it and use it now can really do fine-grained control. So you hide that complexity, you run them through a standard process, and allow them to graduate into these more complex features, but don't force it on them. When I come to something, like Final Cut, I like, oh my, where do I start, right? It's this overwhelming experience. It's sort of like the game of Go as well. I don't know if you ever played Go, but Go is a very simple game to learn. You can learn it in 5 minutes. To master it takes about 20 years. Mm-hmm. So we want that ability for them to focus on the simple stuff, get going, learn to use it right away, and then get to the complexity. The other part is, the most important part of our app is what's in your brain. Okay? You're telling a story. There's an infinite different ways of telling a story and showing a story. So we want you to focus on what's in your brain and not focus on the tool.
Perfect. So you mentioned your team really quickly,
mm-hmm.
and I know that you guys are constantly, I'd love to sit in on one of these 15-minute meetings and see how ideas are generated here. But what's the most important thing you've learned about not only keeping them on track, but also keeping them motivated? When you get so many different pieces of feedback, how do you tell them this is the one thing that we're going to focus on and accomplish by the next update?
Well, I think there's one thing. I have a great team, and they're so internally motivated that I have to do very little to keep them motivated.
Perfect.
Yeah. So I think selecting your team is really important as an entrepreneur. It's a special type of person that can do this, right? There's no sense of sort of safety. There's no guarantees. And a lot of people say they would like to have that environment. But the reality is that their brains don't function well in that environment. So we've distilled it down to a great group of guys who are completely confident in what they do. At the same time, we've had our battles. We've had the knockdown, drag out. So Tim Flack, who's one of our key guys, sometimes I liken it to almost a marriage, because we'll go like 2 months and then we'll have this knockdown, drag out fight. We'll yell at each other. He'll go out and have a smoke. I'll go and sulk in the other room. 5 minutes later, we come together and we solve the problem. That is normal. If you have a great team, you're also going to have a very passionate team. And passion means that you care. And if you care, you're going to come with this really strong perspective. And sometimes that's going to clash. So you have to be able to resolve that. So we treat it like that, and we really encourage the behavior of engagement. And in the end of the day, we always solve it. We always work it out. And we've got a beer or coffee together.
What's one of the tricks you've learned to incentivize users to keep uploading? Is there some sort of gamification going on?
Great question. So yes, we added a bunch of different things around gamification. We're going to be adding more. One of the things is reward people with different badges based on their behavior. Some of them are about uploads, but other ones are just about being social. So if you're a curator, you're a person who loves to look at videos and share them, you get badges for that. You get badges for followers. You get badges for following. So there's a really way to encourage these different behaviors. Even if you're a great creator, you're not creating videos every day. Even in your business, you're not creating videos every day, right? So what do you... Oh, you... Okay, so most of the population, even if they love creating videos, isn't creating and uploading them every day. So what we do is we want to encourage other behavior. We want to be able to sit back, take your iPad out, sit on the couch, and just swipe through and watch 100 videos, and then like and share and comment on those. So that's really that perspective. But there's also some sort of subtle gamification built in. You get to be on the pick list if you upload a good video. So there's a lot of interest on people doing that. People look at the number of followers, so they really want to encourage other people to do behavior. Well, how do you get followers? Well, most people won't follow you unless you have some good videos. So there's sort of that gamification that's going on. I ultimately think that we learn best in the format of a game. When you were a kid and you did games, learning was a pleasure. Shouldn't learning be a pleasure in everything we do? So we want to reward that through gamification type features.
Absolutely. So let's look a little bit ahead into the future then. And in your blog, you said 12 months in the world of mobile tech is equivalent to at least 10 years in the real world. Anything can happen. So what needs to happen in the next one mobile tech year for you to feel entirely successful?
I'd like to go from 500,000 plus users to 5 million users would make us feel very successful. I think if Givit was a name that everybody talked about, then I would know we were being successful. When some videos start going viral that Givit does, we know we're being successful. So those types of things, and some of that is already starting to happen. Those are parts of being successful. I would like complete smooth integration. I think we're achieving it with Glass and Givit, so that everybody by default, when they use Glass, they're using Givit as a companion app.